Hello again, everyone, and welcome back to Reddit Aliens. I am John, and as always, thank you so much for being here. Straightforward topic, let's do it. How did you almost die? Please remember to like, share, and subscribe. Exploring tidal cliffs, accidentally slipped into the water, went in sideways, narrowly missed hitting my head, just barely clawed my way out of the rough tidal zone. It was way over my head, and was so choppy I was being slammed against rock. Please be careful around tidal cliff zones. Got lost in the Bolivian rainforest for 3 days after consuming tea made from angel trumpets. Cancer, stage 4, given less than a month. That was 10 years ago. Caught an incredibly rare fungus that attacked my lungs and would have attacked my other internal organs. Took 2 years to diagnose because it's so rare. Only patient my respirologist has ever seen with it dropped to almost 80 pounds. I could literally feel myself slowly dying. Got locked in the boot of a car for about an hour during an Australian summer. I don't remember what I did, if anything, to make my mum punish me like that. I was 8 years old. Car accident when I was 12. My dad was hopped up on painkillers and driving me to Little League tryouts. He fell asleep at the wheel and went head into a tree going about 40 on a country road. Broke my right femur, left arm collapsed a lung, tore apart my left knee ligaments, crushed my left foot. I was in ICU for a few days in a coma, and the femur break came really close to nicking the artery and sending me off to the land of the dead. What it really killed was all of my confidence and pretty much ruined my childhood. I developed a severe anxiety disorder and became a recluse. I stopped playing sports and just stayed indoors a lot. Damn, man. Sorry. That's just terrible. Hope you got a little better since then. Brain tumor and brain cancer. The cytostatic treatments went horrible. I vomited more than 10 times a day and shat myself more than 10 times a day. Could barely stay awake. Couldn't communicate with anyone because as soon as I tried to talk, I vomited. Lost all my muscles, almost starved to death, got underweight, got diplopia, my spine got bent due to my position when I laid down all day, lost my eyebrows, got too thick saliva to be able to swallow it, and more. Went on a high elevation alpine hike on Mount Rainier without an out-of-town friend. At around 10,000 feet, we decided it was time to head back down the mountain. About 5 minutes into the descent, I was in an uncontrolled glissade across a snowfield. Even though I knew better, after I was unable to slow myself, I put my feet down. That's when my crampons bit into the snow and stopped me, sending all of the force into my legs. I heard an unsettling pop and felt excruciating pain. As soon as I stopped, I looked down and saw that the heel of my left boot was where the toe should have been. I had severely broken my leg, and it was at least a 3-hour hike down with sunlight and warmth declining. We were not equipped to be there after dark. Within a couple of minutes, I could feel my extremities beginning to tingle, was going into shock. Fortunately, I had some glucose gel packs which I began to suck on, and that seemed to keep the shock at bay, which was a good thing because the radiating pain was quite enough. Our cell phones weren't working well, but another stroke of luck was that I had put a GMRS radio in the bottom of my pack, and as such, we were able to get word out on the radio that we were in trouble and needed help. Ham radio operators heard us and relayed our position and the details to the rangers. The National Park Service couldn't get a helicopter that was willing to fly to that elevation so late in the day on a Sunday in early October, so they had to gather a party of climbing rangers to come get me. A couple of other climbers on the way up the mountain really saved me by giving up their climb and assisting me, covering me with sleeping bags and making tea while one of them went back down the mountain to meet the rangers coming up. Shock and hypothermia very likely would have done me in that night if they hadn't happened upon us and helped. It was pitch dark and freezing cold by the time the rangers arrived 4 hours later. They strapped me into a litter and had to carry me off the mountain. Unfortunately, the climbing rangers are not EMTs and do not dispense meds, so even though they were doing all of the work on the climb down, it was absolutely excruciating for me. It was almost 9 hours between the time of the accident and the time I checked in to the emergency room. A few weeks ago, I was walking home from the grocery store late at night and noticed a homeless guy across the street looking a bit off. I wasn't sure if he was high or having mental issues or just entertaining himself. He started to cross the street diagonally towards me and had one hand stuffed in his jacket. I felt a bit uneasy about the situation, so I phoned a family member, picked up my pace, and kept looking at him to check where he was in relation to me. When my mom picked up the phone, I spoke a bit louder than usual and told her I was walking home down ABC Street. I didn't say anything about the guy. I just asked her about her day, but I wanted to be on the line with someone just in case. After a few seconds, he turned and stopped following me. Less than 12 hours later, less than 2 blocks away, someone was stabbed and nearly killed. When I saw the face of the alleged perp on the news, it was the same guy who had been following me down the street. I was pretty unnerved the day I saw that. If I were less aware of my surroundings or less trusting of my gut, who knows if it would have been me he stabbed. A meth overdose. I was 22, deep in the midst of addiction, hadn't eaten for 2 weeks or drank anything for days. I was somewhat forced to shoot up during this time. I was an addict. The person supplying me was an abusive ex. He told me if I didn't shoot up, I wasn't allowed to use anymore, so I did. He did it for me. Chose how much, stuck my arm, and I immediately blanked out. I don't remember much of that day, other than honestly believing it was the end and I was going to die. I quit using after that, and moved away from him, and I've been clean from it since. Next month makes 8 years clean. For a laugh, I took a big lungful of helium from the tank at work as I was leaving, walked out back to where my friends were waiting for me, was going to say something in a funny helium voice when I saw them, but I apparently blacked out once I got outside, walked across the road and face planted into the dirt, scraped my ear on a piece of rebar that was sticking out of the ground about 18 inches. Had I been a bit to the left, it would have gone straight through my head. My friends said I went into convulsions for a bit, and then I stood up confused. Not drinking enough while at sea, burning up and felt crap, went for a sleep on my bunk and woke up 6 hours later as I was dumped into a bath full of ice. The sickbay nurse then made me drink a 5-liter jug of weak orange with some other stuff in it over an hour. Once I finished that, she gave me another to finish off. When I was found, I had a temperature of 107, apparently, so was carried straight to sickbay and dumped in the bath. I didn't remember any of it, apart from the shock of hitting the frozen water. A few years later, it's early winter. A friend's dog has chased a duck onto a frozen pond and fallen through the ice. I didn't hesitate and slid out onto the ice on my belly and got to within 6 feet of the dog when the ice cracked and I went in as well. I wasn't overly worried, as the ice was only about half an inch and the depth was about 20 feet. So I grabbed the dog, swung him up, and literally threw him across the ice toward the edge, and then just made my way, breaking the ice until I could stand and get to shore. Only once I got there, I did realize just how cold and numb I was, but I didn't care. Home was only half a mile away, and I'd saved a dog. Double murder robbery I missed because I was doing bong rips with my ride. Ruby Tuesdays, 1998, July 4th. If I'd been on time to work that day instead of 10 minutes late, I'd be dead too. I went in the back before the cops even secured the place. Saw too much. Miss you, Joanna, and I know your little boy is happy and healthy and with your family. Hemorrhaging after birthing. Placenta wasn't detaching and the midwife assistant tugged and tore the umbilical cord. It had to be manually removed along with handfuls of clotting blood. A bootleg grounded outlet. Scummy landlord didn't want to bring an old house up to code, so his maintenance guy flipped the polarity on all the outlets and tied ground to hot. Somehow, this tricks an outlet tester into showing a pass, but this makes grounded things like guitar strings and microphones electrically hot. I had one in each hand and clenched. I had to mummy walk into the next room till something unplugged. Walked away with burns on my palms. I got drugged at a local bar when I was, I think, 25. It was the scariest thing in hindsight. I was at the bar talking to the bartender. Then, next thing I knew, I was half conscious laying in the bathroom covered in vomit. There's a whole block of time that I lost and cannot remember for the life of me. But everything before that and after, waking up in the bathroom, I remember fine. I was in and out of consciousness. I was completely immobilized. My friend was finally able to open the door, and the ambulance came and got me. At that point, I was conscious in my head, but physically I could not move or talk. I was vomiting on and off. I remember the ride to the hospital. Then they put me in a room. I was laying flat on my back, and I could tell I was about to vomit again, but I had no way of communicating or moving, and I thought for sure I was going to choke and die there. Luckily, a nurse ended up coming in and noticed. She sat me upright in time, so I ended up being okay. They did not check me for drugs. They didn't even test my alcohol level. They just called my mom and sent me home. I had only had 4 drinks the whole night, assuming I didn't drink any more during the time I was blacked out, and I can definitely handle my liquor. Even at my most intoxicated, I've never been immobilized like that, so I knew I was drugged. I tried to tell the bar the next day, and they basically told me I was barred and there was no way I was drugged because the bartender is reputable, as if she could watch every single person at all times, but I digress. I have my suspicions on who it was, as I only left my drink with my friend and her boyfriend is a sketchy character now that I look back at everything. Moral of the story, don't trust anyone with your drink alone, because people are crap, and you can't trust anyone. Well, with that few suspects, it kind of narrows it down. Is your friend still with that guy? My dad was driving our family of 4 down a highway. It was en route to Bakersfield, California, and I remember there were trees and open fields on either side of the road. If anyone is familiar with that area, y'all can correct me if I'm wrong. I remember my dad was drinking a beer, and had just finished one, and he asked me to pass him another one from the cooler he had in the back seat. I don't know if I was being cheeky or if I just sensed something wrong, but I didn't give him another beer. He kept yelling at me and getting more and more angry until he decided to aim the car at the center divide straight into a huge tree. I thought we were all going to die, and it was all my fault. But then at the last minute, my mom pulled at the steering wheel, and we just kind of fishtailed into hitting anything. I know it wasn't my fault, but I was fairly young at the time, maybe 8-ish, and it was just scary. When we were getting in the car to go to school, my little brother had this habit of turning on the ignition. One day, he forgot to open the garage door. Our mom wasn't very quick to get her bag that day. I remember talking to him and how we both agreed we were still tired, and I remember waking up to the sound of the garage door opening and my mom being pissed. Walking down the pavement with my girlfriend holding hands when I was 18. Person driving a car and using their mobile phone mounted the pavement at 45-ish miles per hour and hit my girlfriend square on. Broke my wrist and compound fracture of my right arm. Threw my girl 120 feet down the road and killed her outright. I didn't even feel the pain in my arm while I cradled her broken body. Found out at the autopsy that she was 4 weeks pregnant with my first child. Driver got 2 years suspended sentence, and I saw him laughing and joking with friends and family as he left court. Never even apologized. Totally broke me. Survivor's guilt is horrible, and my life has been a car crash. This wording was intentional ever since. Sorry for your loss. I mean, it sounds, not to make light of it, but it sounds like the beginning of a revenge story. I don't know if I would let that guy have peace. In college, when I was a freshman, got too drunk and high at a party where I hadn't smoked in probs like 2 years. Got back to my room and passed out on the bed. Woke up to my roommate dragging me off the bed and yelling. Was not coherent. Turns out I was blue in the face and choking on my vomit. Crazy thing is, he wasn't supposed to come home that night. He was supposed to stay at someone else's place, and something told him not to when he came back. Dude saved my life. Still best friends to this day. Got a tattoo on my leg. Not my first tattoo, so I figured it would be a simple heal like the others were. Apparently not. First couple of days were a breeze. After day 2, I couldn't stretch my calf to walk, so I had a limp, but I wasn't really concerned at this point. Day 4 rolls round, and by this point, it's a deep shade of red and burning hot. So I described what was going on to the artist and got told that it was okay, and leg tattoos usually end up like that. In hindsight, I should have gone to the doctors for it, but I trusted the artist and figured it was okay, and it's just freaking out because it was my first leg tat. I still had an inkling of doubt in the artist's response, so I'd asked my mate to take a look and see what she reckons. And naturally, she flipped out and told me to get it checked, but I'm an idiot, so I didn't listen to her right away. But by that night, it had gone from red to dark purple with pus blisters forming, so I went to A&E. I would have died had I not gone to the hospital that night. It was my own fault because I should have gone on day 4, but it's over now. Was trying to buy illegal stuff in Mexico, college, spring break. We ask a bellboy at our hotel. He says to meet in the lobby at 8 p.m. Score. We get ready and head down to the lobby. We're told to get into this white Jeep. No, we're hesitant. They can tell. They offer us a beer. They had a 30-pack in between the driver and passenger. Red flag. We were in college and we're like, hell yeah. The next 30 minutes were them cussing us out, telling us to leave their country. All Americans do is come down here and treat their country like shit, and so on and so on. At one point, my friend puts his hand on the driver's shoulder to try and calm him down. He pulls out a gun and slaps my friend's face with it. He's drunk, getting extremely angry at us, and is speeding and swerving on these narrow dirt roads outside of Cabo. It is a neighborhood, so there are cars lined up on both sides of the street. Not much room for error. As we were preparing to die, I'm looking at the road up ahead, trying to see if there's a good way spot to jump out and roll out of the car. Nothing. A few minutes later, felt like an eternity, the driver slams on his brakes, yells something in Spanish, and tells us to get out. We do. The driver and passenger get out and tell us to stop. We do. He's holding his gun. We tell them we just want to go back to our hotel. We're sorry for upsetting him. He laughs. He says, "Don't you guys want some party favors?" We're shocked, but we reply, "Yes." He says $100. We don't argue. We pay him, and he actually gives me all the money in your wallet. And we oblige. They give us maybe $10 worth of white powder. They laugh and drive off. The car is smoking and whistling. He was driving it so hard trying to scare us. We call a taxi, go to our room, compose ourselves for the next 30 minutes. We then go out to the club and try to score some more. College stupidity at its finest.